student-centered, that now it's working with the students and being near them, that now that we are talking about collaboration and working within the class, right? And we have in our minds, and we are, right, multitask teachers, because we have to take into account us and how we make them learn. And at the same time, to be happy with what we're doing, to feel happy with what we're doing. And then our relationships. I mean, don't we miss seeing other teachers? Don't we miss interacting with other teachers as we used to? We do it, but not at the same extent. And then at the same time, we have the student composition in the classroom, which is not the classroom anymore, any longer. It is a virtual environment many a time, right? And we have to think of those low academic achievers, the ones who have difficulties, but they're not near us. We can't talk to them after class. We can Zoom, of course, but it's not the same. Students who have their own behavioral problems and that we have to deal with, right? And then we have the very gifted one, all together, all watching, all of us watching them on the screen. Then, where are we? Are we leaders, right? How do we connect ourselves with other teachers? How do we connect ourselves with other students? Where do I place myself today? And that I think is a big challenge. Where am I today? Okay. So if we think of well-being, if we think of happiness, if we think that we have to get the best of students, let's see where our strengths and the students' strengths are. Okay. And of course, we have to mention positive psychology, and we have to mention Seligman, okay? Right? And this view of life, because I think that positive psychology, in a way, is view of life, okay? View of teaching, view of learning, view of existing, okay? And this is trying to promote ourselves, our communities, and our environment so that they can thrive, so that they can thrive, so that they can you mute your microphones? Okay, so that they can thrive, so that they can be happy, because we want our students to be happy. We want ourselves to be happy, because we all know that if we are happy, we grow, okay? And learning is enhanced, okay? So the aim of the talk was pleasure attainment and pain avoidance. Can we avoid pain? No. But we have to be aware that to a certain extent, this pain can be avoided if we have and we take into account and we have this present, the social integration. How can we integrate our students socially when they are in their homes and they're not present? We don't know how long this COVID will last. We don't know when they will be able and for how long they will be able to carry on coming to school. But we have to integrate them. So what changes can there be so that if in any case students don't come to school or can't afford to come to school, how can they be integrated, okay? How can our society, when we talk about our society, we talk about our environment. How can it contribute, okay? How coherent, right? How coherent are we in terms of social connections with our students? Are we coherent? Or are we expecting the same from our students when much has changed? And then when we say this, right, when we talk about this social environment, there are elements that we have to take into account. One is emotions. But what kind of emotions? Positive emotions. Another is engagement. I mean, not having them absent, but if we want them to engage, to be engaged and to engage themselves, we have to do things that really are what they need. Okay? What sort of relationships we establish with students that we saw until the 13th of March for a few days, and now they're coming back again. I mean, for a student, at secondary school level, 6 months is a lot of time. Many things happen and have happened in those 6 months, right? So there's another meaning to learning today. And when we talk about accomplishment, because we want our students to feel accomplished, right? What are we talking about? Now, when we go on this voyage of discovery, we are going to discuss if we are really thinking, right, of students to feel accomplished, right, and us to accomplish our tasks with this new normality. Okay. If we talk about positive psychology, mindfulness comes to our minds, okay? Seize the day, right? Seize the day. Remember the film? Seize the day. I mean, today, this very moment, what is it we are doing in the sense of making them aware of an experience which is unfolding, which is different, but which we have to seize and make the most of it, okay? Right? Because what we want is our students to flourish, and we want to flourish. And flourishing in the sense of feeling that what we do has a purpose, and that purpose is making students feel at ease and happy to learn. Okay, so we must have opportunities to develop this well-being, this feeling of I like you, you like me, and I want the best of you, okay? I want my students to feel that they are there for a purpose and that I am just a tool, right? The means for them to achieve a purpose. This well-being is not just physical or mental, it's everything. It's also social, right? It's my class, my students, my school, my place where I live and where I am, okay? So, pain avoidance. We all want to avoid pain. Who doesn't? How can we avoid pain in this new normality? One is doing what is worth doing. I mean, but how can we make those students feel that they are doing what is worth doing, right? How can we make them share with us that I'm asking them to do, and I'm asking them to participate, right, will provide fulfillment to them when they have been, right, taken from one way of working to another, right? The purpose, integrating them socially, I say it again because it's key to what we're saying, and resilience. I mean, we have to be resilient and we have to make our students be resilient, right? And when they are resilient is when they feel that they are really doing something worthwhile, that they can grow in the self-esteem, okay? So, having said this, we are going to go on a voyage of discovery. We are going to go on a voyage of discovery. So all of you on board, okay? So we are now on board and we are in a sailing boat, okay? Right. Sorry, wait. What are those, who can tell me what those drawings, that figure represents? Would you say What can you say about this? What can you say about this? What is it? In the chat, what can you tell me? What is this? What is this? Yes? Okay. Navigate safely. Okay. Okay. Right. Right. Okay. And okay, a life preserver. Okay. Yes. Right. Okay. What is the second one? The sales. Why are the sales important? Why would you say sales are important? Why? What happens if a sailing boat doesn't have sails? All right, won't be able to move. Okay, right. Okay, then we have the weather. Then we have other boats. Then we have the destination. I mean, when we go sailing, there is a destination. And then you have the sea, and then you have the compass, and then you have the steering wheel. Okay. How? So now we go to the captain. Now we go to the captain. Okay. Why would you say the captain is important? Why would you say the captain is important? The captain of a ship. Would you identify yourselves with the captain of a ship? Yes? Would you identify yourselves with the captain of a ship? What is his role? What is the role of a ship, of a captain in a ship? The leader, okay. What else? He's the one that makes decisions, okay. The captain has to know how to manage, yes. Controls plans. Would you feel identified with the captain? The sailboat is your environment. The captain is you. Would you feel identified? Would you? Sometimes, yes, okay. Right. The captain needs the crew. Yes, you're right. Exactly. So, yes, you're right. Exactly. The captain needs a crew. The teacher is the captain of a class. Good. Yes, in a way. Right. Yes, like a class, there are many factors. The class is the boat. Right. Okay. So, let's go to what I put besides you. Would you say that the captain is alone? Can the captain sail on his own? Well, he can. But if it's a big sailing boat, does he need others? Does he need others? Yes, he does. And if we go to us teachers, do we need others in order to work well in the school where you work? Would you say you need other people? Yes. What other people do you need? Yes. What other people do you need? You're the captain, right? What other people do you need? The students, the colleagues, right? So would you say that in order to take good decisions, you need others, you need teams, or you need other people to provide help? Yes. Okay. Okay, good. In an educational environment, you've already said it, that the captain can be the head of the school, can be the teacher at times, right? And what happens if the captain takes, not you, the captain, if a captain in a ship takes wrong decisions? What can happen? What can happen if the captain in a ship takes wrong decisions? What would happen to the ship? Yes, it will. Yes, it will affect the rest of the crew. Yes, consequences like what? Like an accident, no? Right? Not arriving at your destination, right? Very good. The ship can sink. That would be the worst. Right. Very good. The ship may sink. So imagine what happens when we, the captain, or the head of the school, the captain, or the head of the whole system, right, takes wrong decisions, what can happen? What happens if there's no freedom on board the ship? I mean, imagine a captain who doesn't allow any other person, any other member of the crew to say anything. And then let's transfer the captain to us because we're on board the ship. Okay, if there's no freedom, can there be good decisions? Can there be good decisions if there's no freedom? Would you say there can? No? No. There can't be good decisions, right? If there's no freedom, there can't be good decisions, okay? And the consequences, if there's no freedom, is again that the system in the ship collapses. So, wrong decisions and the system in the ship collapses. Is the captain important to raise spirits among his crew? Would you agree, or you say that no? I mean, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the captain. It doesn't matter if the captain intervenes to raise spirits, or if he doesn't intervene. Does it matter or it doesn't matter? What would you say? Yes. Yes, right. Totally. Yes, exactly. It does matter, right? So the captains, you, the captains, right, according to the environment, or we are the inspectors, right? The inspectors, the heads of the schools, the teachers, us, right? In our environment, we are responsible for raising spirits among our students, our crew, our students. If you feel yourselves as captains of a ship, right? How do you see yourselves as members of that crew, having the role which is responsible for having the students learning, right? So you, as members of the crew, right, you are the captain. So what can you do? What can you do so that there is learning? What about the water around what about the water around the ship? What's the water for you? What's the water? What is the water for you? Tell me, what is the water? You're on a ship, right? Possibilities, the environment for learning, very good. Context, the school year, the medium, excellent. I mean, so you have the captain, the boat, and the water, the medium, very good, right? So there's the water, there's the water, right? Hold on. There's the water, right? Which is where we are. The water is, if we are at school, the school. If we are with the screen and the students on screen, it's that digital communication that we have. We can't have the boat moving if there is no water. We can't really teach properly if we don't take into account the environment where we teach. That environment, the water for the ship is us where we work. So imagine the boat, imagine the captain, imagine that boat within an environment, okay? So it is that physical reality that changed, that has made us change the way we plan, the way we. Last year, I was with you. We were all together. I felt you, right? And now, of course, I see you, but it's not the same. I can't move about. I'm stuck here as you're stuck there, right? What happens if we are not happy with where we live, where we study, where we work? How can we solve this problem? What happens if we are not happy with how things are going with our class, our environment, the water, what elements must I change so to change? And I love this sentence, right? Water is the playground of life to the boat. And water is to us, right, the environment where we live, where we are, and where we move ourselves. Okay? What about the compass? Is the compass important? Hmm? Why is the compass important? What does the compass do to us? You see, what is the compass? Okay. Yes, what is a compass? Hmm? What is a compass to us? What would you say is a compass to us? What does it provide? I want to know to look when you're disoriented. Okay, our goals give us direction. Okay, very good. Laura, it gives us direction. Very good, Milton. Yes. Our year plan. Okay, our annual plan. Okay. Yes. Well. Yes. Yes. Lesson plans. Okay. The compass. The compass has a word that I want to highlight. The compass is what gives us feedback. And if we're talking about reflection, remember that at the beginning, when the principle of self introduced this conference, she talked about reflection. How much do we have to reflect today? Because all this, what I'm talking about, is to make us think. And this metaphor of the sailboat is to put us in a very vivid way what we are going for. And it's fantastic to do it with your students. I mean, asking them to do exactly what we're doing now together so that they feel, right? So they sort of reflect on their lives, as if it were a sailboat, okay? Right? The compass tells us where to go, as you were saying, right? The route of life. And we have sometimes we can get positive and negative information. As we, every single day of our lives, we get up with positive and negative emotions, with light and shadows, because our lives are a cumulus of sun and shades, shades of meaning, shades of feeling, right? Shadows that we have and that really disrupt our well-being, and sunny emotions, positive emotions. So the compass is to us teachers, right? As you said, what the feedback we get from students, okay? Which can be formative assessments, which can be summative assessments, which can be interventions, which can be just interacting with them, right? But getting feedback on how sad, how happy, right? How stressed or unstressed they are, right? And one vital thing, are we going to where we want to go? This is something. Now, today, not last year, not before the 13th of March, today, am I going with my students where I want to go? Am I heading where I want to head? For that, we need feedback, right? So, when we talk about the compass, it's just something that reinforces our choices. I want to go north with my class. Let me get feedback. Am I going north? No, I'm going northeast. I change. Am I going west? Let's check. Yes, I am. Okay, fine. Let's go west. So the compass is what reinforces our choices, be it the annual plan, be it getting feedback from students, being getting feedback in many ways. It is what tells us you're doing fine. No, come on. They're not following you. No, come on. It's not so easy. Okay. the destination. Is it important to have a destination? Would you say it's important to have a destination? To know where you're going? Sorry. Is it important to have a destination? Is it? Yes? Why it's important? Why? It's a key, yes. It's a purpose. Right? Totally, right? It is. It is very important to have a destination. We have to know where we have to go and where we are going. And sometimes today, this year, we had to change. It's our purpose. Very good. All right. It's a starting point. Very excellent. Right. This year, we had to change our destination. We had to go elsewhere. We had to change our destination. We had a destination and we had to change it. And we are changing it now again and again and again. Before, I started working a very long time ago. And before, I planned and I would just go through my plan and advance and advance and advance. Now, we know that life has changed so abruptly that our destinations have to be adapted, right? And we wanted to reach that place in 2 days. Well, maybe it will take us a week. Maybe it will take us 10 days. We know we have to get there, but let's see how we can get there and when we can get there and destinations. And I think this is very important that are meaningful for students today. In our case, that we teach English, right, or we teach in English, right, our destination has to be meaningful. They have to feel, our students, our crew, right, has to feel that what the destination that we share with them is something meaningful for them. Not easy, not at all easy. And that I'm confident that all of us together will get there, right? So the destination, achieving, getting there, but how, right? And working as a team to really energize that destination so that we all want to get there, right? We all know that that is where we want to be in some time in the future, okay? Leaks. And we need what happens when there are leaks in a boat, in a classroom, in education, in the school environment? What happens when there are leaks? There are always leaks, huh? Imagine your house, right? But let's think of the boat. What happens when there are leaks, right? What happens when there are leaks? What are the leaks for you? What would you say the leaks are for you? Right? Problems, losses, very good, losses, problems. When is it that we are tired? We can be strong. What would be the opposite of strong? What would be the opposite of strong? Would you say, right? Yes? Sorry? Weak, yes, yes, very good. Weaknesses. Are we aware, like a captain of a ship, that if there are weaknesses in what is happening in our classrooms, in the learning that is taking place, in the interaction that is taking place, in what we are doing together with the students, if there are weaknesses, we have to address them. Because if we don't address them, what will happen is that we will sink. And nobody wants to sink. Neither the students nor us, nor education in general. So if there are weaknesses, let's address them, right? Which are those factors which make those weaknesses be present? How can we go about them? What are the leaks in terms of personal well-being? I feel depressed. I don't know, they're not learning. They don't come to my class. They don't feel that what I'm doing is important. And I feel I'm not giving my best. I'm not doing my best. Hmm? I don't know what I did in the past few months, but it didn't work. Or when we do something and we in an impulse, right? Not thinking, just doing it, right? How many times, me especially, right? I'm do something impulsively and then I say, why did I do it? Really not transmitting emotions, right? Or just focusing on, I'm not getting there. I'm not achieving this, what I want to achieve. I can't. I don't know. I'm lost. I mean, is it good? It's good to solve those leaks, but it's not good to focus just on those leaks, okay? Just focusing on what is wrong, huh? Right? Because if we do that, right, we won't ever fix those leaks. Hmm? We won't ever get over those leaks, which are part of the risks in a boat and parts of which is part of the risks in our classes and parts of the risks in our lives, the leaks. Other boats. Why are other boats important? Why are other boats important? Is it important to be with other boats? Oh, I don't need other boats. I can sail my ship on my own. I don't need other boats. Sorry. Sorry. I don't need other boats. I can sail on my own. Why are other boats important? Why would you say other boats are important? Yes. Cooperation. Yes. Yes. Enriching ourselves, sharing experiences. Yes. Okay. Yes. Sharing experiences. Feeling others. Feeling others are with you, feeling you, right? Emotional support, very good. We all need other boats, yes. We all need other boats as we need the community. Excellent. That was the word I wanted, right? Emotional support. We all need other boats. And our students, I mean, if you do this metaphor, if you play this metaphor, I'm going to send this to the inspector. So afterwards you can ask for the pictures because they are photocopyable. They're not, I mean, you can just download them, okay? So other boats are very important. We are not alone and we can't be alone. Collaboration, teamwork, cooperation, right? Those people that surround us, right? The social network. Imagine that one of the things that really has been harmed today is the students' social network, huh? Right? That they didn't see each other for a very long time, right? Right? Other boats also help us to get to the destination and how we are getting to the destination, supporting us, right? In stormy weather. Other boats tell us that it's important to take into account whatever, right? So we need the community. Our students need the community, right? So everybody needs other boats in life. So this metaphor goes beyond the classroom, goes beyond our lives, goes to existence itself. The sails. Do we need sails in life? Why do we need? I mean, why does a boat? Sorry, why does a boat need sails? Why a boat needs sails? I'm going to go a bit faster because if not, I won't finish. Okay, right? Because the sails are the strength. Exactly the opposite to the leaks. Because the sails, when you see the sails, have you seen? I mean, to tell you the truth, I've never been on a sailing boat, but I've seen them, right? And you see those sails in the wind, and you see the sailing boat sailing across the waves, and you feel happy. I mean, when I see those sailing boats and the people in the sailing boats, right, navigating, it's contagious. You feel by watching those sailing boats life and the strength of life, and you feel that that sailing boat is working well because look at the sailing boats that they swell, right? They swell in the wind. Okay, it's energy, that is contagious. It's energy that comes to you and you like having, right? It's life itself. A sailing boat with the sails swelling in the wind is something that makes you feel that you're alive. And this is what our classrooms have to be. Hmm? Like the sails, right, on a lovely, sunny, and windy day. The strength. The steering wheel. Why does a captain need a steering wheel? Why would you say the captain needs a steering wheel? What for? Is it important? Yes, of course, right? The steering wheel. Huh? How do you play yourselves, right? How does our education in Uruguay? Who is the one who steers the wheel? Is it important? Yes, because if it's not, right, if it's not in the right direction, right, you can have an accident. You can collapse, right? The whole system can collapse. So the steering wheel can be like the values. What are your values? What you said at the beginning. Would you change your profession? Nobody said it because we are teachers and because we love what we do. And that's something that I would say there are two professions. I would say doctors also, doctors in medicine, and teachers. We love our profession. So then, if we love our profession, and we do, right, which are the values that we take into account in order to give the most to our students, right? It is the way we want to live our lives. That is the steering wheel. Think of you, reflect on what you've done in the last 6 months. The steering wheel was what you wanted, your choices, and how you dealt with your life. How you, each one of you, dealt with your life, okay? And those values, obviously, if they are positive, if they are strong, if they are emotionally positive, will contribute to well-being of not only you, of your environment, in terms of work, in terms of family, in terms of friends, in terms of everything, okay? So where do we have to go? In a direction that reduces fear, that reduces stress, that makes us feel safe. And like those drinks, no, those drinks that sportsmen take, steering wheel that energizes us, that gives us energy, right? The weather, very important. The famous expression, to feel under the weather. I'm not going to put the chat because we haven't got time. To feel under the weather. Is it important? Yes. The weather is unexpected. Wow, a storm. And we were on the beach. Wow, a storm. And I was in the middle of a class, right? Something that comes like an accident that you can't control, right? Those moments that you feel that you face something which you were not expecting, something that really harms you spiritually or physically, and you can't control. How many times in our place of work, right, we've been under the weather or we've had an unexpected event? How did we deal with it, right? How do we deal with the unexpected? Like when we are amidst a storm that we weren't expecting, okay? How do we stay on track? This pandemic, this COVID was very unexpected. The weather was here. We were not expecting it. On the 5th of March, we had no idea that this was coming, okay? And many a time we need somebody to come and rescue us. Huh? We need somebody to come and rescue us, as our students need to be rescued, as our colleagues need to be rescued, as our environment, right, other people, right, we interact with need our support, and we need their support. So if we share this with students, when do you need rescue? Ask for help. When you need right support, ask, okay? There must be somebody there, right? And we educators know it. We have to be there, really holding our students when they need us, hugging them, right? Tugging them when they can't go on their own, right? The lighthouse. What is the lighthouse? Is it important? Yes, right? It tells you, be careful. There's a rock there, right? Very important when there is the unexpected, the lighthouse. What think now? Don't share. We can't share. I was thinking of sharing, but we can't. We haven't got the time. But think. Who was the lighthouse? Which person near you was the lighthouse when we had this very bad weather on the 13th of March? Who was or who were, right? The lighthouse, okay? Who illuminated you when you said, ah, right? Who really said, I'm here, hold, let's go this way, right? Right. So these are the domains we talked about. The water, concerning life domains, the compass concerning feelings, the steering wheel concerning values, the leak, our weaknesses, the sails, our strength, the weather, unexpected events, other boats, our social relationships, the destination, the goal, the attention, where we focus, our thoughts, the captain, no, this is the captain, attention, thoughts, motivation, and action, right? We are all captains. We are all captains. Why? Right? We are all captains. Because in a way, we function like a sailboat. And when we function like a sailboat, we do it because we want to really take into account our surroundings, take into account that people are different and that we have to understand them, that we have to sail in a direction that provides well-being to us and to the people near us, students or whoever they are, that we have to be aware when we are planning and giving a lesson and planning for our students and changing our plans where we want to go, that our sails have to be in such a way that they can get the wind, right? That we can't always just think of the destination because it's not just the end, but it's also the process. What happens while we get there, not just the destination, right? It is, if we focus on the process, we're going to enjoy the view more. If we just focus on the destination, we're going to miss the view. We must have choices, right? Where we can enjoy reality. So this is a matter of leaving our comfort zone, okay? Because we're choosing different roads and we are encountering different waters. We are not there, right, any longer. We had to leave, right? We had to leave our comfort zone. And then finishing with this. This is us today. We were in a comfort zone. We were feeling safe. We were in control. All of a sudden, we changed. We had to change. And we got to the fear zone. And what do we do? And what do you think? And I don't know. I don't know if I will be able to do it. I don't know if I will be able to teach like this. And they're not coming now. And right. And then we start sort of learning. So from the comfort to the fear zone to the learning zone. And let's see, maybe we can. And see if I can use Zoom in this way and go to breakout rooms and make them interact. And all of a sudden, all of us found a purpose, met our dreams that we can still teach, right? Although circumstances have changed. We are setting new goals all the time now. If we set new goals in the past, now we are setting new goals much more, right? So this metaphor is just sharing with you what life is. I'm going to send it to the inspector. So afterwards, if you want to use it with your students, I use it a lot And it's really very fulfilling for students because you make them feel, right, and you share with them, right, what life is about, especially today. Well, any questions? It's 10 already, so I have to stop. Huh?
Thank you very much for your participation, Rosario. This is a time where people, audience members, submit their questions to the chat below, so we can avoid interferences like this. If you have any questions, write them down and I will communicate them to the speaker.
Okay. I mean, what I can do, Sandra, I'll send you now via email this presentation, and you share it, okay, with our colleagues, because you can use it. It's free to use. I mean, all those pictures are downloadable. Okay. Yes. Hope it wasn't too boring.
No, I mean, I don't need to say it. We just unmute the mics and everybody will give their opinion to, I mean, tell how interesting it was. So really thank you. And I don't know if Jennifer, a student from that, will take notes in the chat. Jennifer.
Okay. Lovely. Then thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Rosario.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosario.
Bye bye.
Thank you so
Rosie.
much.
Thank you,
very much.
Rosario.
Grande
Thank you so
Rose.
much.
Okay. Well,
If we don't have any questions, we can move forward.
no question? Thank you. All right, yes, Rosario is always so clear when she speaks, so calm and soft. And I can see now on the screen, Gabriel. So we are honored to introduce to the ones who don't know him, because there are students of SET here and new teachers. So we are going to introduce Gabriel as he deserves. Gabriel Diaz-Maggioli is an educator who applies the lessons learned in the classroom to his roles as teacher of teachers, researcher, writer, and consultant. He holds a doctorate and a master's in education from the University of Bath, and is a certified researcher at National Agency for Research and Innovation, ANI, what we call ANI, in Uruguay. He is currently National Academic Coordinator of Modern Languages at the National Council for Teacher Education. And this is simply what we call, and amongst students, in general, we mention el coordinador del Departamento de Lenguas Extranjeras del CFE. Well, this is Gabriel.
C'est moi.
Okay, so the author of 27 books, and many academic and professional articles, Gabriel has won 2 awards in 2020. The Dr. Robert Horton Award for Publications, University of Bath, and the Virginia French Allen Award for Service and Scholarship, TESOL International Association, and has recently become president-elect of the International Association of Teachers of English as a Foreign Language. So, with us, Dr. Gabriel Diaz-Maggioli, International Education Consultant, Professor, ELT Methods, National
Sandra, basta.
It says Montevideo, Uruguay, but we know he's not from Montevideo.
No, I'm not. I'm from the beautiful province of 33.
All right. Well.
Okay. So I'm going to share the screen. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. It's quite an honor, honestly. And I hope that what we are going to be doing today proves useful, right? I call this talk Why Students Don't Write. So what I would like to know is what you think is the reason that students, our students in public schools, tend not to write. If you could just write a few ideas on the chat, that would get us started, right? We have to teach, somebody says, lack of strategy and stimuli. They don't write because they don't read. Lack of ideas, not motivated. They have to think. They find it difficult. They don't feel motivated because of technology nowadays. Okay, they feel they can't do it. Lack of confidence. Purpose for writing. We don't devote time to writing in class because we generally plan reading lessons, listening, etc., but rarely do we plan writing lessons. Connection problems. Teachers have to teach how to write. They do not have a reason to write. They do not have the habits. Okay, very interesting ideas. Thank you very much for contributing those. Now, one of the things that has generally been associated with writing is that of all the skills, when you hear a colleague talking about their students writing, we generally approach it from a deficit perspective. Said, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do with these kids because you know, oh, let me change the slide. They have all these problems, right? And I just made a list of problems that I heard about, and I would like to confirm whether you think they are the same your students have. First thing is, they don't know how to punctuate. They don't know how to use commas, full stops. They do not have an idea of the word order. They write as they speak. They write with a Spanish structure in mind. Their grammar is all over the place. Even though we have spent 2 months teaching them the simple present, they still write, he live, he go, he eat. The vocabulary is always, I went to the beach. I went with my grandfather or with my friends. It was very nice. It's very basic vocabulary, even though we have taught them a lot of vocabulary. Another problem is register, right? If we're teaching them like a letter of application, right? That was one of the things we would teach in Segundo Ciclo, for example. They generally don't respect the register, right? They have no idea who they're writing to, why they are writing to that person, and how it should be written. They would say things like, I don't know, if the advertisement says contact Mrs. Jane Dobson, they would write like, Dear Jane, right? Things which are completely off register. They don't respect conventions. Typical conventions, like for example, putting a comma after the year such and such, yours faithfully or yours sincerely at the end, those things are not respected. The layout, they have no idea of the layout. They just write in continuous prose without breaks, no paragraphs, nothing. The text does not look organized. It comes out as, I had this idea and I wrote, etc., etc. Spelling is a problem. They make a lot of spelling mistakes. And most of you pointed to that. Popular, because if you are preparing students for international exams, this is the kind of writing that you should do, because that is what is expected of them, that they can imitate a sample that they have seen somewhere. Now, after the model text is read and somehow analyzed, we give them control practice of those highlighted features. So we do gap fillings using the linkers studied, or we put the linkers in a box. They are all mixed up, or they have to correct the incorrect linker. But these are manipulative exercises, not communicative exercises. After we make sure that students know the features of the language, we work on ideas. But look at this. We wait for the ideas until almost the very end. Because after the ideas are organized into a logical structure, right? And the important thing is that the ideas are correctly sequenced, not that they are good, right? Then we ask the students to write a similar text to the one that we modeled. And if you have been around for some time and you have taught with this approach, which is the one that most course books bring to bear, you will see that students tend to memorize whole paragraphs, like a letter of complaint. I'm writing to complain about, I don't know, Bluetooth loudspeaker that I bought from your shop on Main Street. And then you ask them to write a text, write a letter of complaint about a cell phone that you bought in the Antel shop. So I'm writing to you to complain about a cell phone, that is the only change, that I bought from the Antel shop, right? So the product approach can be very effective in helping students replicate texts, but they sound completely unnatural and they sound completely contrived. They're good for an international examination, but not necessarily for daily life. As a reaction to this approach in the early 80s, people started talking about writing as a process, and there's where when our life became hell. Because what these people did, it was started in San Francisco, and the name of the project was the Bay Area Writing Project, the BOP for short. What these teachers did, they said, well, I don't see the voice of my students in the writing. So why don't we look at what good writers do and imitate that in the classroom? Wonderful idea. But you know, if you are just looking at bestseller writers, the bar is a little bit too high. I don't think our students can all be bestseller writers. Hopefully they will be writers, but not bestseller writers. So they proposed this very convoluted process where you did a first draft, then you receive feedback. From that feedback, you edited that first draft, wrote the second draft, you received feedback, you edited it, and you produced the final draft. This means that a teacher will have to read at least 3 drafts, but sometimes the process went on and on and on. And for example, the first draft, the feedback on the first draft was mostly on meaning, not on form, right? There was no editing per se, but organization of the ideas. And this approach focuses on the process leading to the product, but not the product. There was not an interest on the final product. The focus was on the process. It does help a student understand how the composing process works. How can you be an effective writer? Because it gives them writing strategies like planning, brainstorming, proofreading, editing for content, editing for language, etc. It helps them build a repertoire of these strategies so that anytime they write in any subject, they can borrow those strategies. It gives students time to write and rewrite, so there's no pressing need to come up with something like in the product approach. It helps students discover what they want to say or what they want to write about. And there's a lot of feedback along the composing process, not just at the end, like with the product approach. Feedback comes from both the instructor and the peers, because one of the things we do is a conferencing where I show you my writing, you show me yours, and I respond to your ideas and I see if I can understand it or not, right? So these individual conferences help personalize and differentiate the feedback. Now, there's a problem with the process writing approach. It's very engaging, it's very tiresome for the teacher, and it does not guarantee that the product is good. So you may have a very articulate student voice, but it might be completely inaccurate. And that is not what we want, right? So if we look at the syllabi that are, except for the one in first year, the ones that appear on the CFA webpage, we are told in the syllabi that when we work with written texts, we have to follow a methodology that combines the best traditions of both. Now, I have done my fair share of visiting student teachers, talking to teachers, and whenever I say, well, you know, this, not many people seem to notice that that is in the syllabi. And not only is that in the syllabus, it's also described, explained, and there are ideas for you to use. But we don't see those applied in class. So what the syllabi say is that we should promote a text-based approach. Now, I'm going to show you two pictures. Right? I want to know, just put on the chat yes or no, if what you see here is a text. This is a page from a book, and the book is there, called War and Peace. Is this a text? Just write in the chat yes or no. Okay, a lot of people are writing yes, yes, I suppose, looks like. Good. Now, I'm going to show you another picture. And I want to know if what I'm going to show you now is a text. Is this a text? Everybody says yes. Nobody says no. Good. Okay. I'm going to correct you. This is not a text. This is the text. A page from this book is not a text. It's a passage. So how do we define text? And I'm taking this from the syllabi. I'm taking the exact example that appears in the syllabi, which are the stop sign and the War and Peace book, page from War and Peace. We define a text as any stretch of language which is held together cohesively through meaning. If I only give you one page from War and Peace, you don't have that cohesion. You don't know who the characters named there are. You know nothing about the context where the action happens. So a text is something that conveys meaning. And this has its basis on a social theory of language, right? Where there are two things that play a crucial role, the situation and the culture, right? Everything that I'm sharing here is in the syllabus, so I'm not going to read it or explain it in depth, but it comes from a social theory of language called systemic functional linguistics, which, as you can see, the author is Halliday, and he published his book in 1978. How do the situation and culture interact? Well, basically, at the situational level, all language occurs in a social context, right? The language of the courtroom is not the same as the language of a shop, right? What happens in each context is that there is a reason for communication. And remember, text can be oral or written. A text is not just a written production. A dialogue is an oral text. A song sung by a singer is an oral text. Everything is characterized by a register, which has three components, what we call the field, that is the topic, what is happening, what is a social activity, why are we communicating? There's a tenor, which is a social relationship. I'm sure you're going to speak in a different way to your partner than to your principal, than to your student, than to your aunt. So depending on our relationship with our interlocutor, we're going to use a certain kind of language. And then there's a mode, right? Does the situation call for writing or speaking? For example, let me give you, for instance, you are in a party, right? And then one of the guests in the party is becoming quite obnoxious. And you see that this person is making havoc. and you have your cell phone. What do you do in that case? Do you text the host or hostess, or do you record a voice message from the same room? In general, there we would write. We wouldn't send a voice message, right? Now, imagine this situation. You know that your friend is teaching through Zoom at this time, but you are in desperate need of some material for your next class. Again, you send your friend a WhatsApp. You write it. You don't speak it because you know you cannot interrupt your friends, right? So the situation determines who, where, why, how we communicate. And then at the broader level of culture, each culture, and this connects somehow to Kaplan's contrastive rhetoric, at the level of culture, we produce text in a particular way, right? So we know that a text in one area of knowledge, a text in science, for example, it will have a lot of characteristics that a text in history won't have, or an email wouldn't be the same thing as an essay. Those kinds of things, these patterns within texts that have evolved to achieve particular purposes and the same general pattern, we call those things genres. Or if you want to put it more simply, text types. And if anybody who has a microphone on could please silence yourself, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much. So at school, we teach particular genres because we want students to write about different contents. Our syllabi are theme-based. We have to teach through thematic units. Those thematic units sometimes force us to promote either history or science or mathematics or art. And if we're getting students to learn the language naturally through authentic texts, it's not enough just to give them a good reading text. We need to analyze it and show students how this works in this particular genre, right? If you look at this table, right, and this is taken from a book by Caroline Gibson, an Australian researcher. She says that in school we teach certain text types. What I have done is I have sort of got inspiration from her table, and I created one for what appears in the syllabi in secundaria, right? From what I see, the kinds of writing that most frequently appear, the kind of texts that we ask students to create, and I say text both in reading, listening, speaking, and writing, oral and written texts, not just written here. Bear with me for a minute. We generally do recounts. For example, what I did at the weekend. That is an example. A narrative. We engage students in saying stories, storytelling, or writing stories. An example would be The Elephant and the Mouse. We ask students to write reports on insects, on laboratory experiments and things. We ask the students to explain things to us, to write procedures. For example, how to make a healthy meal. And because we have debates in our syllabi, and we also have the oral language development activities, we do discussions. A discussion is when you present one side, but we also do arguments, like in the case of debates, where you present the two sides. Right? For example, should smoking be made illegal? I hope not. More illegal than it already is. So if you look at the table from the column perspective, pardon me. Sorry. You will see that every text has a certain purpose, a certain organization. Cohesion is about the text holding together. One of the devices for cohesion is connectives. There are many, many others. And there are other language features. So if you look at each of the columns, you can see how different these 5 kinds of text are. And I cannot teach this simply through the product approach. I cannot teach this simply through the process approach, because it might take me a whole year to go to teach my students how to write a recount, for example. I actually need to find an alternative way. And systemic functional linguistics has created something called the curriculum cycle, or the teaching learning cycle, which is very Vygotskian, very centered in an idea of language learning as a mediated experience. That is to say, the teacher helps the students. And this model starts with the first thing students need to know when they face a text, any text, oral or written, is to find out the context. Why are people communicating? Who are these people? Where are they? How they are communicating, right? So what is the topic? That would be the first moment. Activities in which you get students to explore the context. The next step is to show them a model. This comes from the product approach, and you deconstruct it. Now, this is not analyzing it like in the product approach. In deconstruction, it means that given that context, given those elements of register, if you want to write this kind of text, or you want to say this kind of text, we need to organize it how in paragraphs, and each paragraph should have an indentation. Now let's look at how which are the words which are repeated in the text, right? That is lexical cohesion, right? How is the text sequenced? And so that deconstruction is basically telling students the secret to writing a good text or creating a good text. Some teachers say, oh, but if I give them that, then I will have nothing to correct. Exactly, that's the idea, right? If we have the secret, why not share it? Then what you do after you have deconstructed that text through reading collaboratively, we're going to see it now, we engage the students in writing together with us, right? So I go to the board and say, we're going to write about this, or I start a conversation and they give you the ideas. The first thing you do is to say, how do I start? After that joint construction, you remind the students of the context and you remind them of the characteristics of the text. What you do is 2 things. I generally do a joint construction of the text, which is not guided by me, but I put students in groups and I get them to write the text in groups. And you're going to say, but that's not realistic. I know, but I'm not asking them to write something for me to correct. I'm borrowing from the process approach to writing to give them practice in writing strategies, and they can do this in groups. The last thing would be to, yes, tell the students, okay, for next class, write about this. But look at this independent construction of the text. It doesn't come out of the blue. It comes from a sequence of 3 other moments where the students have learned how to do this, right? Now, the last thing, which is not generally included in the curriculum cycle or does not appear very frequently, is to ask the students to link their text to related texts. Ask them to go online and find a similar text, or if you have been working on a topic, ask them to find a text about that topic. And when they bring them to class, we compare what they have written, their independent construction, to the other text that they bring. And we confirm those things. Now, this is a spiral process. right? But the other way around from the process approach. The process approach started very big at the beginning and ended up in the text. Here we start very small at the beginning and we end up with a lot of text. And instead of just doing editing, what we do is we approximate the text slowly in different formats so that we can confirm what we have. So this is a whole process. How do you do it? Well, look at this. When you're building the context, you can do listening, you can do speaking, you can watch videos, you can use it, you can do it now through a forum, you can do it through a task on Crea2, okay? You can even do it through a test or a questionnaire. The idea is to generate ideas, right? Building the context. You need to find there activities that reveal the social purpose of the text type. And you do prediction, you do anticipation activities. And then the fundamental thing is students should have very clearly established, sorry, the field, let's say the topic, and they will need to discuss the topic, they will need to review vocabulary, right? And you don't have to say, this is a list of words that you may use. No, you do an activity like a brainstorming activity or like a role play or, I don't know, a prediction activity where the vocabulary surfaces naturally. Then get students to graphically represent the relationships in the text, right? Who is writing or speaking to whom? And then also represent graphically the distance between these two people for the mode. This is the first moment, building the context. In modeling and deconstructing the text, we look at the text structure. What are the stages? I'm trying to keep my eye on my watch so that I can allow time for questions. Sorry. Stages of action of the stages, then compare the model with one where you have removed some of the text features. For example, say, you haven't organized the text in paragraphs. You just give it as a continuum, right? And you tell the students, how would you logically break down this text in different parts? And then you show them the model for them to compare. Sorry. And then, yes, focus on the language. How do we say it, right? And these two questions that I suggest there, how do we know what the text is about? And what is the relationship between the sender and the receiver? Will give us important clues as to what kind of language we need to use. Now, a little bit of information for you guys. Go to the syllabi and you will have actual activities that you can implement here, particularly in the third year syllabus, right? You have specific activities for each of these moments.
Estás muteado, Gabriel.
Sorry, somebody muted me. I was saying that you can go to the syllabus, particularly the third year syllabus, and you will see here, for each of these moments, a lot of activities, concrete ideas you can use. After they have modeled and deconstructed the text, students build the text together. How can you do it? You have to give them an activity, right? And my advice is, we will have opportunities for writing many different kinds of texts throughout the year and throughout the 6 years of secondary school. So let's focus on specific strategies, like how do you translate gestures from oral gestures to writing? How do you make the emphasis? Or you can do skimming. Let's find those specific bits of information quickly, right? Making notes, planning, editing, drafting, all those activities need to be explicitly taught, right? You can role play the text in groups to see if students really understand what they have to do. A good old, very traditional activity, but which is very effective and which students love. It's called dictogloss or dictocomp. Basically, you are jointly constructing the text. So what you do is you give them, you have just analyzed one model text. Now the students know the secrets of how that is organized. Now what you do is you take another text, same genre, same register, and what you do is you tell the students, I'm going to read this text out loud. And you just read it aloud, normal speed once. Now you say, I'm going to read it again. This time you can take notes individually, but I'm going to read it at normal speed. I'm not going to dictate it so that you can write every word. And you read it the second time. Then you say, I'm going to read it the third time for you to complete your notes. Okay, you read the third time, normal speed. And then you say, now work with a partner. Compare your notes. And you get them to compare their notes. You can copy notes from your partner if needed. And the last thing you do is, I'm going to read the text again for you to complete your notes. And then you put them in groups of 4 or 5 or 6, and you ask them to rewrite the text. Now, the students are going to be using everything from moment 1, building the field, everything from moment 2, and they will be jointly constructing the text. Information gap activities. Students have one student has a part of the text, the other one has another part. Typical thing that is used in examinations. A paragraph is missing. Write that missing paragraph. Listening and acting out. In groups, constructing or completing a text. Or simply compare the text that they've written to the model, right? And looking at the features. Next is independent construction of the text, and that is the student writing on their own. But look at all the advantages that that student writing in his or her home or desk will have at this stage. They will know the topic. They will have reviewed the vocabulary, used the vocabulary during moment 1, during moment 2, during moment 3. They know how the text has to be organized. They know that they have to leave indentation, and they know that they have to break it down in paragraphs. It's not like they are doing things out of the blue. And more importantly, because they know the topic, they know the field, they know the mode, they know the tenor, they have ideas to write. So the excuse like, I have nothing to write, yes, they do. In the independent construction, of course, everything comes together, everything is integrated. But the important thing here is the text has to have a purpose and it has to have an audience. So if need be, the learners can ask you. One of the things that I have established in one of the courses that I teach, which is not a language course, I grant you, it's a teacher preparation course. I instituted a dual submission thing. So I give a deadline. Like, for example, we have worked with a unit, we have finished the unit, and I give a deadline of 1 week from today for students to find, to upload a draft. And I respond to the draft. How do I respond to the draft? I tell them the positive points of the draft. I tell them the negative points. For example, I may underline everything which is wrong, and I use red, right? And then I give them 2 or 3 specific changes to make. Rewrite this paragraph, or this sentence is not clear, rewrite it. Just 2 or 3 things, nothing more than that, right? And then the students submit again with the feedback. And believe me, if you follow this process, students' texts are going to be almost, I'm not going to say 100%, but almost impeccable, right? Now, the consultation can be peers or teacher, of course, right? And the important thing is, at the end of this, please evaluate the success of the texts that the students have created. How do you do that? And I'm sorry about the music, we can hear it, but the gas salesperson goes around my house every day. I don't know, and 3 times a day. So evaluate the success of the texts. Tell the students what they need to improve. Don't hold back. on how they can improve things, okay? Well, for linking related texts, I simply ask the students to bring more things, right? And what can you do, right? If you have, for example, a dialogue and a newspaper article based or a magazine article based on that topic, ask them to compare what's the difference between oral and written text. You can cut up the text and text on the same topic, right? Cut them up, mix them up, and get the students to select, to sort of separate the texts. So these ideas also appear in the syllabus. So if I were to give you principles for designing writing tasks, the first one is devote class time to teaching students how to write. Unless you teach them how to write, they won't be able to do it effectively. They might scribble, they might jot down, but not write as a composing process. Use meaningful text as models. Texts that are meaningful to students, not just to you. Many times, we'll fall in love with this text, but to students, they're like, eh. So if they're not really interested in the text that you're using as a model, they are not going to engage, right? So try to find texts that they can also access through their own devices, right? I'm pretty sure that even in the poorest context, there is a cell phone in every home, right? With an internet connection. Maybe they don't have a lot of money for that, but they can go and look for that text, or a text that connects to a video that they may want to watch. Make those texts as authentic as possible. I know that it's not always possible to use authentic material with all learners, but if you are going to write the model text yourselves, remember you are not a native speaker. You have not been taught how to write like English people write in England, the UK, Australia, etc. We are Roman speakers, and no matter how good our English, we do not, a native speaker can tell the difference between a text written by us and a text written by other people, right? But a native speaker. I'm not saying that only native speakers should create this text. No, not at all. But yes, to make the fewest simplifications as possible, right, to the text so that it's comprehensible for learners. And always share your model text with other teachers to see if they make sense. You will be surprised. Clearly establish the genre, provider, and also the register, the field, the mode, and the tenor is the register. Provide an authentic reason for writing. An authentic reason might simply be, I want to evaluate your writing, and there's nothing wrong with that, because my role as a teacher is to act as an evaluator as well. It's one of my roles. So that is an authentic reason, right? Or if you're using portfolio-based assessment, I want you to write a text that will go to your portfolio, that some other people are going to read it. Incorporate practices of good writers, balance process and product, account for cultural background, connect reading and writing, make all the tasks interactive, and then sensitively apply methods for responding to and correcting students' writing. Notice that I didn't use the word sensibly, but sensitively, because when we receive feedback on our writing, because it's so permanent, it's a little aggravating sometimes. I remember a teacher I had in IPA, right, who gave me back a composition I had written. And she told me, you have fought a brave battle against the English language. And then she gave me the paper. It was completely covered in red. And you have lost that battle as the blood in your paper shows. She intended it to be a joke. But to me, it was like, oh my God, I don't know how to write. How am I going to be a teacher? And I really got depressed. So be sensitive about how you respond to your students' writing. Don't trivialize what need not be trivialized. That is why I said choose 2 or 3 things to change. And last but not least, evaluate in the way in which you taught it, right? So if you have only used a product approach, because, I don't know, it's your choice, your preference, or the student's need, do not evaluate creativity and originality, because you're not going to get it. If you use a process approach, do not evaluate accuracy, because you are not going to get it. If you use a text-based approach, use this notion of only responding in grading to the final independent writing. So make your evaluation consistent with your overall approach and read the syllabi because you have a lot of resources there. And I was listening to Rosario and her boat metaphor, and I'm going to also use a sailing metaphor. And this is a photo that I took, and I'm very proud of it because it was a beautiful sunset, and you can see a little boat. And to me, writing has a strong connection with water, right? Like, for example, with swimming, because you only learn to swim, first of all, if you are close to a body of water where you can submerge yourself, right? You're not going to learn to swim in your bathtub or in your shower. So if we want students to write, they have to be exposed to the water, to the texts. Secondly, in general, you learn to swim if somebody teaches you. Unless you're very brave, you don't just haul yourself into the water and say, let's see if I can survive, right? With writing as well, we cannot just say, oh, write for homework. We have to teach them how to write. And one thing that has happened throughout my life with writing is I never cease to be amazed at how writing affects me, right? From a technical perspective, when I prepared international examinations, from an expressive perspective, I think we have all at one point or another in our lives written something lyrical like a poem or words to a song that we keep hidden, right? We don't share, but we needed to express ourselves through writing, right? So when I read this, a quote by Henry Miller, I thought it was the most appropriate closing for this. And the quote is that writing, like life itself, is a voyage of discovery, right? And this was written by Henry Miller, not Harry Mill. I don't know why I put Henry Mill. So guys, this is our bibliography. This is my bibliography. As you can see, I have used materials that can easily be accessed online. And now I'm going to stop sharing and just devote a couple of minutes to questions. I know I started later, so I apologize for that. But I don't know if there are any questions. Just write your questions on the chat. It's nice. Thank you very much for the feedback. Don't thank me, just ask me questions. No questions. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Hope you get some ideas. Don't forget to read. I know the syllabi are thick, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth there, but please read them. There's a lot. I mean, I can say it because I was part of them. We created resources for the teachers when we wrote that way back in 2006. Way back. I was a representative from the ATD representative for Consejo de Formación y Educación in the committee. And honestly, we really wanted to make things very clear and very explicit so that you had tools. Use those tools because they have been proven to be useful. As many people, if you go look at I have a question here, how to avoid a translator. You don't have the problem. When you show the students how texts work, and when you follow this process, this is very Vygotskian, this is very scaffolded. So you really are working in the zone of proximal development of the students' writing. Now, I didn't say something that I would like to clarify. Fan of this approach for all the skills. Because if you think about how we do listening or speaking, and we talk a lot about speaking and who are the people, but we do not end up speaking, right? We run the risk of really wasting our students' time. But for writing, I mean, the results are evident. You can see the students actually doing things in writing, and I invite you to do that. Okay, what path should teachers follow when they feel they lack creativity? First thing, stop thinking that you cannot be creative. I trained myself way back on being creative because I read a little book back in the 80s about being creative. And one of the things that the book suggested was, whatever you do on a regular basis, change one thing. And then I met this amazing person. His name is John Fancello. He must be in his 90s now, but he's still actively teaching online. If you Google him, John Fancello, I'm going to put the name. He spent a lot of time in Japan, but he's American, and he was a teacher at Columbia University. John has amazing ideas, right? And he used to teach for us at the new school in New York, and I used to go to I asked for permission to go to his classes because they were amazing. And things that he did that changed the dynamic of the class. One day he said, well, today I'm going to teach the class from the back wall. So the change need not be something wow, right? And we looked at what happens when you stand at the back of the classroom, right? How students turn, how they start reorganizing themselves, and what kind of changes that makes to the way they interact. Another day, John brought an umbrella, and when he started the class, he opened the umbrella, and he taught the whole class under an umbrella. The students were like, what the hell is going on with this guy? I mean, he lost it, right? And then he said, aren't you curious why I'm using this umbrella? 5 minutes into the lesson, right? And they go like, well, I don't know. They want to be polite. Well, he was going to talk about assessment that day. That was a topic of the lesson. So assessment is an umbrella term for what? Just by doing something stupid like that, he changed the dynamics. Students started contributing in a different way. So if you want to be creative, change one thing, right? Well, thank you very much, everybody. I leave you to continue enjoying the wonderful talks of this seminar. Thank you very much for your time. And I will be sending the PowerPoint to the inspectors as well. So it will be in the Facebook or whatever space, okay? See you soon.
See you.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. So enlightening.
Sorry, I have to say that I'm going to leave now because I have exams in IPA. I have to be there at 1 o'clock. That is why I'm not staying. I'm sorry. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gabriel. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye, Gabriel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. I would like to thank you, all of you, for being here, connected at this time of the morning. And I would like to present Aldo. Aldo is going to be our next speaker, and we are very pleased to welcome him here. Aldo is an EFL teacher. He holds a BA in EFL and a Master of Arts in Adult and Higher Education from New Illinois University, and a Master of Arts in ICT from the University of Salamanca in Spain. He's also a PhD educational psychology and research specialization in qualitative research. He's currently the head of Políticas Lingüísticas in Codicen. Welcome, Aldo. Thank you for being here. A pleasure to see you.
Thank you, Gloria. Thanks, everyone. I'm very happy, and
Thank you, Miriam, Sandra, Gaby, Mariela for the invitation, and all the people from Cerro del Norte. Thanks, Gloria, for this warm presentation. And one of the challenges is to be after Rosario and Gabriel, who were presenting before me. You know that Gabriel was, well, my mentor, but the mentor of most of, or at least of many of you. And I was very, very sensitive about seeing Rosario Estrada's camera. Rosario, you were taking notes. After 50 years in education, you were taking notes. That is motivation, that is vocation, and you are my inspiration. The challenges, so thank you very much. I'm talking about you, Rosario. You were not listening to me. That's shame on you. I was saying that I was very sensitive about seeing your camera at one moment, and you were taking notes after 50 years in education, and that is something that only people with a lot of motivation and vocation and passion for teaching do. So thanks very much. You are my inspiration, and I hope I can reach 50 years in education one day. And okay. with this wit that you have.
I'll be watching from somewhere.
In the States, I was teaching synchronously and asynchronously online, and for me, to be really honest, it didn't imply a huge change because I was used to teaching in this way. However, for many of us, was implied a big challenge. But for those of you who know this character is Nico from #LivingUruguay, the new books that we may have, or the new manuals we are going to have sometime in the future. So Nico is feeling differently in this slide, and this is more or less the way I feel. And I chose Nico because, first of all, we are very similar. It was not created looking at me, but now that I am thinner, I think that I am more like Nico. So how did you feel when you found the compass that Rosario said? Because in the process of finding the compass, I went through all these feelings that Nico is expressing here. And when I found the compass, I felt like Cantando por un Sueño. So I felt like the guy singing and happy and showing off all his skills, or like the soccer player. I don't know how to play soccer, but I thought it was very funny to put Nico playing soccer. Okay, so, but I'm kind of a juggler and I think that this is what we have learned, to be jugglers, to be dealing with different things at the same time. We are multitasking, and our multitasking is on the spot, because now I can see your faces and I can see that some of you are texting, some of you are cooking, some of you might be in the car, some of you are telling off your kids, some of you might be doing the homework for tomorrow, some of you may be grading papers while we are while we are talking here. So multitasking is something that came up during this pandemic a lot. So for those, I have a chat here. I don't want to. Okay. So one thing, for those of you who like grammar, I am going to share some sentences with you. I used to kiss people, now I fist. I used to look at one person's face at a time. Now I look at many people's faces at the same time. Now I can be looking at 130 something people's faces. I used to work with TPR, kinesthetic students, by planning activities to move. Now we move our hands to have mate or drink coffee or eat something delicious, okay? I used to test students. Now I assess students, because now I cannot control my students. So I have found ways of assessing students rather than evaluating or testing in the traditional way of the concept. I used to have tons of papers and grade them. Now I have files to read and also grade or just assess. And I used to believe that not looking at someone's eyes was disrespectful. Well, I still believe that. So the used to was not maybe the right grammar structure, especially when people turn off their cameras. And I am with Valentina, one of my coworkers here, and she said, but you turned off your camera. So why are you going to say that you turn off that you don't like when people turn off your cameras? I said, yes, but I still think that it's very disrespectful. However, some of the people have texted me and they said, thank God we are having on Zoom because I have my flip-flops on, or because I'm dressed up only in my upper part. Well, I am in the office, so I am all dressed up. But anyway, so there are things that have changed in relationship to this pandemic. And you may be wondering, and why is Aldo presenting all about this? Because these personal changes or these changes in our mindset are going to affect our teaching. So we are going to go through and we are going to go into there. But I think that it's important to have like a self-reflection moment in order to understand why all this has changed. Okay. So my computer doesn't want to move. Now, yes. So there are, as I said before, there are two ways of seeing things. One way is to say, oh, this is a challenge. The other way to say it is, this is a disaster. A positive way of seeing it is to say, this is an opportunity to grow and change. Another possibility is to say, this is a disaster. A positive way of seeing it is say, this implies rethinking my philosophy of teaching. By the way, it's interesting to rethink your philosophy of teaching every now and then. So the negative way of seeing it is, this is a disaster. So I'm going to be very upfront here, and I'm going to say that one of the gainings of this pandemic time is that we have developed a growth mindset. And when we think of a growth mindset, remember Carol Dweck's idea of knowing that everything is part of a process, that challenge is part of the process and triggers more learning. Also, that feedback enriches our teaching and not discourages our teaching. So, because sometimes, and it has to do with what Rosario mentioned some minutes ago, when she was saying that and also the principal from SERP, she was at some point saying that sometimes it was difficult to connect. For some teachers, it was difficult to teach at the very beginning. Okay, but we can see it in a way that it was a way of improving our skills, our technological skills. And one thing that happened, I don't know if you are familiar with Prensky's division of teachers, not only teachers, but also people who use technology. If you remember, Prensky analyzed the relationship between technology and people. And he said that according to this relationship, we can be digital natives and digital immigrants, okay? There is a Uruguayan author, a very well-known author, Roberto Balaguer, who also coined the idea of digital dinosaurs. And I have the feeling that, for example, in my case, I believe that I was a digital immigrant, but because of my age, I know I look young, but I am not that young. I was born before the 90s. So, so one thing that happened with those of us who were digital immigrants, we had a different view of our ability to use technology. In my belief, I was very skillful using technology. And that was not true. I mean, when I started teaching, I realized that I had issues, that I was stressed, that I had issues with connecting, and that I had to rethink the way I was teaching. And that led me to learning, because I had to learn how to use technology in a more efficient way. One thing that I learned some years ago is that in general, when there is a huge change, like the one we are experiencing now, we tend to replace what we have. And I'm going to expand a little bit in this idea. For example, we use whiteboard. So we tend to use the screen of our computer to use it as a whiteboard. We don't have paper, but we use Word in order to substitute paper. So we tend to use the same, or we tend to substitute what we have in order to feel comfortable. But I think that using technology goes beyond that. I mean, you have to use technology in a very efficient way. And in order to do that, you have to really think how you are going to use it. And I'm going to do some autobombo here because I'm going to, with this pandemic, I was reading a paper that I wrote some years ago. So that's why it says Rodriguez 2012. So this is me. In 2012, I wrote an article about the divorce between schooling and learning. And there are 5 ideas that I want to go back to because they are very interesting, and how in 2012, so 8 years ago, we were thinking about what happened now during the pandemic. So, for example, it says, in this dialectic set between society and school, balance plays a very important role. And when I talk about balance, I talk about balance in the relationship between teacher and students. What happens? In an ordinary classroom, even though we use different methods and we use different perspectives and philosophy frameworks, there is an uneven situation because the teacher is always the teacher. So if the teacher wants, the teacher is above, and then the student is subordinated. I mean, you can agree with me or not, but there are occasions. I mean, in the moment that you grade a student, you are in a position of power. So when you study Freire and when you study Ira Shore, they said that one of the things is that we need to strike a balance between what society says, what school says, and what we do in our classrooms. So with this idea of technology and the use of technology in our classrooms, one thing that happens, in my opinion, is that we have more balance. And we have more balance because we are also learning. Maybe we are not learning the content, but we are learning how to use technology. And the students know more about the use of technology, and maybe they know less about the content area. So I think that we have a more even relationship at this time. And tell me if it hasn't happened to you that sometimes you say, okay, can you set the Zoom meeting? Can you do the Google Meet? I mean, sometimes we ask our students to do the technological aspect or upload a video or something, okay? For example, my Google Drive is absolutely full. I ran out of storage and I don't know how to do it because I have tried several ways and I don't have storage anyway. So all those ideas that I was a digital immigrant, but with a great or high proficiency use of technology, now has changed. Collins and Halverson also said that we need a more personal, customized support. And that is what's happening. Because with this idea of technology, we can help students in a more personalized way. And then look at this. With the rapid spread and betterment of technology, informal learning has become an anytime, anywhere activity. In the times of incipient use of technology, authors coincided that 70% of learning was informal. So that means that the classroom is not just the classroom, but we have learning everywhere. And this asynchronous learning that we set in our classrooms is as important as the learning that we set for the formal purposes. Okay? Okay. Another idea is the idea of knowledge revolution, also by Collins and Harrison, and they believe, or they say, that this knowledge revolution that technology is setting or is producing is similar to the industrial revolution that we had in the 19th century. So imagine how important it is for us, because we are going to be part of the history of this change, not only in society, but also in education. And also, we have our friend Howard Gardner. Howard Gardner wrote a book that is called Five Minds for the Future. He wrote this in 2008. And he talks about the role of technology, or the role that technology will have in the future. He wrote, the book was published in 2008, so he wrote before that time. And it says, we can speak about these changes as entailing the power of science and technology and the inexorability of globalization. These changes call for a new educational forms and processes. The minds of learners must be fashioned and stretched in 5 ways that we have not been crucial or not as crucial until now. We must recognize what is called for in this new world, even as we hold on to certain perennial skills and values that may be at risk. So that is interesting, because I used this quote several years ago, and including me, we were saying at that time, yes, what Howard Gardner says is okay, but this is for the future. This is not going to happen soon. I prefer to use the blackboard or the whiteboard or the green board, whatever you have in your classrooms. And do you know what happened? What we are experiencing now during the pandemic times. We had to change abruptly and violently. And this is something that was part of a process, and the process became very abrupt. So when you cannot change the things, you have to adapt to the things. And you have to accept the things. I'm looking at the time. So there are 5 characteristics, in my opinion, about this new normality. First of all, in the triad, in which we have the teacher, the students, and the knowledge. Knowledge is on the spot. Why is on the spot? Because when you ask a student to say something, I mean, imagine that I ask you where women voted for the first time in Uruguay. Some of you may know the answer, but some of you can Google for information. So I have to be more creative in the way I ask questions, because in this way, what I'm doing, I'm assessing students in 2 different ways. For those of you who know that the first woman in Uruguay voted in Cerro Chato, for those of you who knew that information, I'm just checking the content. I'm just checking information. For those of you who Google information about this, what I'm doing, I'm checking your technological skills. I'm checking how resourceful you are to find information. You see, 2 perspectives for the same act, for the same educational act. So the 5 characteristics of this new normality are, as I said, that knowledge is on the spot, but then the other change is what Simone Conceição says, the change in the classroom, or the change of the classroom. In the past, and nowadays as well, we believe that the classroom is a place in which we have 4 walls, a whiteboard, some chairs, and a desk. So the classroom, we need to think that the classroom is now virtual. So we need to think that the classroom is somewhere else. Then another aspect that changed is that seeing the challenge to change. So seeing the opportunity to change. Challenge is a construct of intrinsic motivation, and you know that intrinsic motivation is one of the drives to change. So when you are intrinsically motivated to change, then you are going to be like Rosario Estrada. After 50 years, you are going to be taking notes and you are going to be willing to share your knowledge because this is vocational. This is the way you are, and this is the way to keep on track after some years working. Then challenge, as I said, as a construct of motivation, triggers grit. You know that I am a fan of the theory of grit by Angela Lee Duckworth and Thomas Hoare. And both of them believe that in order to become persistent, something that Rosario also mentioned today, in order to become persistent, in order to be resilient, you have to face frustration. And tell me, have you faced frustration during this pandemic? I think so. Okay, I have some chats here saying, yeah, totally yes, many times, of course. So this idea of frustration. A wide range of frustration mix of, okay, love you. Okay. So everything okay so far? Okay, wonderful. I can see some faces. Okay. Another adaptation that we had to make was about our method. So instead of working in a one-on-one idea, we have to use more PBL. I use the acronym PBL on purpose because PBL stands for problem-based learning and project-based learning. You know that one of the facts about problem-based learning that I like the most is that students first use their own knowledge. Students use their prior knowledge, the schemata. And when you use your schemata, you are never afraid of making mistakes. So problem-based learning for me is one of the best methodologies to use. Problem-based learning is one of the methods that is mostly used for adults, but nowadays is used for any type of traditional or non-traditional students. More independent learning, because sometimes, for example, I teach at Liceo 34, and at Liceo 34, I can teach only 2 of my 4 hours, okay? Sometimes I teach them on site, sometimes I teach them online. But then the other 2 hours have to be of independent work. So you have to challenge your students to work, and you have to support your students, because your students need sometimes through WhatsApp or through the platforms, they need some help. So that makes that you have to be like 24/7 in a way available for students.